CBS has quietly done something very smart with Georgie and Mandy's first marriage. Instead of trying to force Meemaw back into the story or awkwardly recreating her presence, the show has effectively replaced her role without ever officially replacing the character. That distinction matters, because Meemaw was never just a fan-favorite personality. She was a function within the story. And once you understand that, it becomes clear that CBS didn't erase Meemaw. It redistributed what she represented. Meemaw's true value was never limited to her jokes or her one-liners. She was the truth teller, the pressure release valve, and the moral counterweight in the room. When everyone else was lying to themselves, Meemaw called it out. When Georgie got too big for his britches, she cut him down to size. When the adults pretended they had everything under control, she exposed the cracks. That role didn't disappear when young Sheldon ended. It simply couldn't stay attached to the same character forever if the new show wanted to grow. Rather than importing Annie Potts' Meemaw wholesale into Georgie and Mandy's first marriage, CBS made a more sustainable choice. The show now spreads Meemaw's narrative responsibilities across newer and existing characters, allowing the story to mature alongside its leads. That's why the replacement doesn't feel obvious or announced. There's no single new Meemaw. Instead, there's a network of characters fulfilling the same purpose in different ways. The clearest example of this shift is Reuben's Abuela. She occupies the same emotional territory Meemaw once held, older, wiser, blunt, unimpressed by surface-level success, and deeply attuned to human behavior. Like Meemaw, she sees through Georgie almost immediately. She understands ambition, recognizes fear when it hides behind confidence, and has no interest in flattering anyone's ego. Her honesty isn't loud, but it's surgical, and that's exactly how Meemaw operated at her best. What makes this replacement effective is that Abuela isn't pretending to be Meemaw. She comes from a different background, speaks with a different rhythm, and approaches problems through her own lived experience. That difference prevents the show from feeling like it's recycling a beloved character. Instead, it feels like the natural progression of life. When one guiding voice steps back, another emerges, shaped by different circumstances, but carrying the same weight. CBS also uses Mandy herself to shoulder part of what Meemaw once did. Over the course of the series, Mandy has evolved into someone who questions Georgie instead of blindly supporting him. She challenges his decisions, calls out his avoidance, and forces conversations he'd rather postpone. Meemaw used to do that externally. Now, much of that pressure comes from inside Georgie's marriage. That shift reflects adulthood in a way young Sheldon never needed to. When you're grown, the hard truths usually come from your partner, not your grandmother. There's also Jim McAllister's presence, which subtly absorbs another aspect of Meemaw's role. Jim represents legacy, history, and the consequences of past choices. His dynamic with Georgie mirrors Meemaw's ability to remind people that nothing exists in a vacuum. Decisions echo. Mistakes repeat. Pride costs more than you expect. While Jim lacks Meemaw's sharp humor, he brings a quieter, more restrained authority that fits the show's older tone. This multi-character replacement strategy is exactly why Georgie and Mandy's first marriage doesn't collapse under Meemaw's absence. CBS understood that trying to recreate her would be a losing battle. Annie Potts' performance was lightning in a bottle. Instead of chasing that lightning, the show captured the storm around it, the honesty, the friction, the wisdom, and the refusal to romanticize struggle. It's also important to recognize that Meemaw belonged to a story about childhood and formation. Georgie and Mandy's first marriage is about consequence and endurance. In young Sheldon, Meemaw softened the world for the kids. In this show, the world isn't meant to be softened anymore. Georgie has to feel the weight of his choices, and the people around him aren't there to cushion every fall. That tonal shift makes a direct Meemaw replacement unnecessary and, frankly, inappropriate. CBS's approach also protects Meemaw's legacy. By not overusing her or forcing her into a new structure, the show preserves what made her special. Fans miss her because she's absent, not because she's diluted. And if Annie Potts ever does return for a guest appearance, it will land with emotional impact precisely because the show hasn't leaned on her as a crutch. Another reason this replacement works is that it mirrors real life. As people grow older, the voices that guide them change. The grandmother who once told you how the world works eventually steps back, and new figures, mentors, partners, elders outside the family, take on that role. CBS allowed that evolution to happen naturally instead of freezing the story in nostalgia. The result is a show that feels confident in its own identity. Georgie and Mandy's first marriage doesn't feel like it's missing something anymore. It feels like it's chosen a different path. The wisdom is still there. The blunt honesty is still there. The humor grounded in truth is still there. It's just coming from different mouths, in different moments, shaped by different relationships. So when people say CBS replaced Meemaw, the truth is more nuanced. They didn't replace her character, they replaced her function. And that's the smartest possible move. Meemaw was never about screen time. She was about perspective. By ensuring that perspective still exists, even in new forms, CBS honored the spirit of Meemaw without trapping the show in the past. In the end, Georgie and Mandy's first marriage proves something important. Legacy doesn't mean repetition. It means adaptation. Meemaw's influence lives on, not because she's physically present, but because the show understands what she represented and refuses to let that disappear.